again. Michael Ware here for the episode. Let's see, what are we at? 127, I think, of Warrior Wednesday. We've got
Nice.
Lora Thorson here from who we work with at IFC through Lora Thorson Creative. Well, we can talk about that a little bit, and we also want to visit with her about Defenders Live. So introduce yourself real quick, Lora. Tell her what the scoop is here.
Well, I guess we should talk about Defenders USA before we talk about Defenders Live. That's where it stemmed from. So, oh gosh, I was trying to think back. It was 22 or 23 when I was recruited by Defenders USA. And the founder, Adam Winch, is just a absolutely wonderful gun trainer, somebody who I adore, who is has a heart of service and really is doing good work out there in the world. And so I'm really thrilled to be a part of the Defenders USA team. And that fall, after he recruited me, I said, hey, I kind of see a gap here. I really think it would be a good idea to have a podcast. And he's like, yeah, you should do that. That's a great idea. And at the time, I had only ever been behind the camera before with my creative business, which you just mentioned. Mm-hmm. And I felt very comfortable behind the camera, not in front of it. There was a reason why I had done that for years. And so it was a huge learning curve and a huge actually opportunity for growth that I didn't see coming to become the host of Defenders Live. And really what it started out as was a place where I could interview people about anything involving self-defense. Yeah. But as it's grown over the years, I think we're on year 3, the end of year 3, I think going into year 4 now. It's evolved into something a whole lot bigger. It's become a very, I guess you could say, holistic place where I bring guests on that are from all walks of life who talk about everything, still self-defense related, but there is a personal growth twist to it for sure. And we talk about all kinds of different growth, physical growth, emotional control, which is a huge part of being a defender of life, I believe, and spiritual growth as well. Like I've just gone down all the rabbit holes, and it's been a fun journey.
Well, how does one, let's back up for just a second. How does one get recruited by Adam Winch?
That's a good question. Well, this is a God thing, Michael. It really is, because I became a certified handgun instructor in 2020, and it was not because it was a goal of mine to become an instructor. I had somebody come up to me and say, have you ever thought about becoming an instructor? And I thought, no, never in my wildest dreams. I enjoy shooting and I enjoy sharing what I learn with other people, but I had never equated that to becoming an instructor, before. Mm-hmm. And so what happened was, it's just so crazy how it happened. I live in a tiny little town in Montana, and Adam Winch just so happened to be almost in my backyard that year. And again, I can't remember, it was 22 or 23. I didn't even know who the dude was. I had to look him up on YouTube. And I was like, wow, this guy talks about a lot of things that I've never been taught or heard of. And when I went into his class, it was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. Like a huge wake up call for me. And as an instructor at the time, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to change everything about the way I've been thinking about gun training. And I'm going to have to change everything about the way I've been teaching. And I don't know what he saw in me in that class, to be honest. I guess I would say maybe I was open to new information and I was willing to not give up. I think he saw some grit, maybe. You'd have to ask him what he saw, but it's been a wild ride.
So do you shoe your own horses or not?
Well, I don't have any horses right now. No, I've never shod my own horses. I've trimmed them, but never shod them.
Okay. No. Well, okay. The jury's out on the grit. We'll have to see. But if you'd have said, yeah, I've got a Harrier rasp in my back pocket. If you'd have said that, I said grit, check.
Yeah. That's so funny. I love that.
Okay. So let's back up even further. Why was it you were interested in becoming an instructor? I mean, had you been shooting before? If so, for how long? And what made you want to do those things? I'm curious. Well, I know that you're telling us about where you are, and you're going to give us some insight on where you're headed, but I'd like to understand what led you here.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because everyone has a story. And on my show, that's one of the things that gives me goosebumps, that really draws me into somebody, is really learning about where they've come from. And for me, it was a close call experience that led me to handgun training. So, and again, I can't remember the years are getting fuzzier the older that I get, but somewhere around 2016, 2017, I was working for a real estate company, and I was their drone pilot, and they had some property they needed me to shoot, not with a gun, but with a drone.
Yeah.
And it was in the middle of nowhere, Montana. And usually, I think this was the first time in 3 years that I had been assigned a property where the real estate agent actually went with me on the location. Usually I was alone. And in this particular instance, I was with a male real estate agent who was carrying. And I didn't know that until this instance went down. And we were encountered on a desolate gravel road with no one around, no houses in sight, and no cell phone service, by a person who was out of their mind. I swear on, I don't know what kind of drugs. And they were really upset. And anyway, I just remember being in the passenger seat, trying to melt into the seat, like trying to disappear, trying to think, what am I going to do if this person notices I'm here and then comes after me? And if that guy can't protect me, basically. Because at that time, I was very naive to evil, very naive to it. And it wasn't that I denied that it existed. It was that I had never really encountered it for myself. And I just had this very shallow idea of, yeah, someday I'd like to get my concealed carry permit and someday I'll start carrying. But that day never came, right? Until this close call experience happened. And then all of a sudden that all came to the forefront. And I just never, ever wanted to feel that helpless again. And thank God that man was with me and he was able to protect me and everything went okay. Like nothing bad happened, but it could have so easily, you know? And that was a huge wake up call. So that's where it really all began for me with the gun training.
Okay.
And then once I took my first gun class, I was so hooked. I just became like, I took every class that place offered for like 2 years straight. I just could not get enough of it. And so, yeah, then that's what led into someone saying, hey, have you ever thought about becoming an instructor? That's where, so there's the little gap there maybe that you were missing for your audience.
Okay. I'm curious, what was that conversation like when you were with this male real estate agent and this tension and moment of calamity had passed? What was that conversation like?
Well, I don't know that it was a conversation. The gravel road we were on was very narrow, and so it was easy to stop somebody if you needed to or wanted
Yep.
to. And this person was coming up on us very slow. So at first it was like, does that person need help? What's going on? And then that person stopped, and the real estate agent stopped. What I didn't know, Michael, was that this real estate agent had training. He had quite extensive training, not just with a gun, but with managing unknown contacts and de-escalation. Again,
Mhm.
thank God for that, right?
Yeah.
Because it could have gone very differently had he not, because that man was dropping F-bombs left and right. He was mad because the real estate agent was in his territory, so to speak. What are you doing out here with your fancy new car? And he was dressed really nice. And that was what the whole like debacle was about. Who are you and what are you doing here, kind of a thing. And he was just really kind to the guy. He was just very calm. But I remember at one point that guy reaching between his console and his seat of his vehicle. And that is when I saw the real estate agent not pull his gun out, but I knew he had one at that point. And he never had to do anything, but he was prepared to. And it was just an exchange of utter meth head chaos, someone with that kind of a brain and rage
Mhm.
against a person who just remained very calm and kind the whole time. And eventually the guy, I think, just sort of lost interest, I guess would be the best way to describe it. But then what was cool was the guy that I am speaking of, when he posted up on top of a hill, he posted his vehicle in a way that we could see if he was going to come back. which was
Right.
great, right? And again, that's an awareness I didn't have at the time, but he let me know what the plan was. Hey, I'm going to post up right here. I'm going to watch. I'm going to have a lookout. You go do what you need to do. When you come back, this is what we're going to do. And I remember the conversation on the way back from the location was like one I'll never forget for the rest of my life, which was talking about wolves and sheep, right?
Yeah.
And sheepdogs. And the sheepdog concept was something I never heard of. And that's when he told me about Dave Grossman too. And he's like,
Yeah.
you need to read this book. And I got from one of my friends, the On Combat book. That was a really good book. That was like the first book I ever read. And I've read it multiple times. So yeah, that was the beginning.
Well, I'm sorry that you were jolted like that, but I'm also glad that you were jolted like that, because sometimes we need a serious push, something that can give us a taste or a flavor. I'm not wishing anybody bad experiences, but the truth of the matter is they tend to make you come to some decisions. And usually when you arrive at those decisions, they're with clear and distinct conviction.
Exactly.
I took a call, as you know, just before we began recording. My wife's letting me know she's giving my daughter a ride to work. Well, 12 hours ago, my daughter had a car. 11 hours ago, loose gravel hit a bridge, and she's fine. She's fine. She's pretty sore, but she's fine. But, she's all upset that her car is destroyed. She's upset that she wrecked it. She's disappointed in herself and some of the things that she would have. And I'm like, listen, sweetheart, you're okay. You had a brush with something, the airbags deployed. Yeah, you're beat up. I want you to keep moving. Yes, I think you should go to work because if you sit around, you start to get really sore and stiff. It's okay for you to keep going as long as you're not dizzy or something crazy. She was checked out, of course. And I'm like, this is okay. I said, it'll be all right. We can replace the car. You're far harder to replace. So let's be honest about the nature of these things. And we talked through it. And I said, I might have a little skin in this. And she's like, why? I said, well, when we went out and we drove on gravel, when we drove around in snowy parking lots, and I had you deliberately, put the vehicle into a skid. We only did that a little bit. We giggled some because I grew up on gravel roads, pretty much way too fast, sliding sideways in a controlled skid the whole time, stupid teenage kid stuff. But my daughter didn't seem like she was too interested in that, so I didn't push it. And I think we should have done more than that, because a freshly graded road and it was narrow, and a little concrete bridge that's only wide enough for one vehicle were enough to sideswipe it and make all kinds of trouble. But I say all this to say, I have no doubt that because of this scenario, she'll approach these things with a different view than she did in the past. So she's had a brush with something that she didn't enjoy. And now there are precautions that she's going to take. She's going to think and look forward. It's normal to change now because you've been changed by your circumstance. And there are good ways that we change, Laura, and there are bad ways that we change. So it sounds to me like you changed for the better and said, I need to take full responsibility for this, because I don't want to be in this position again. At least I'd like to have an opportunity to make it out of this position if I could. That's very important. And then some people say, I'm going to be scared now. I'm going to, let fear dictate what happens next. And so there's a forked road and a couple different paths from here. I'm glad that you took the one you have.
Yeah. And I feel a responsibility now to speak to those women out there, or men, that have had similar experiences, and I've had a journey now for almost the last decade that I can speak to, and I can help other people, wherever they are on that path, because I have been the person who thought, oh, I carry a gun, I'll be safe, kind of a feeling, right? Well, no, actually that doesn't make you safe at all. I know that now. But when I started out, I didn't know any better, right? And I don't look down on people that think those things or have that way of framing that in their mind, but opening their mind to new ideas and possibilities could be a way to help, someone else not feel completely helpless and actually have the wherewithal to take action if needed, So it's a responsibility that I take on with joy. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to have gone down that path so other people might not have to.
Well, are you running into other scenarios, or where you're talking to men and women who have been through some sort of eye-opening or experience or something that made them question? Or why are people coming to you or finding themselves in front of you for training? I'm curious about that because it seems like they fall into a few different buckets in this neighborhood. I'm curious how that works where you're at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know exact percentages because even though I can get an idea, I can get a vibe on if something has happened to someone before, not all of them will open up to me about what's really going on or what has really gone on. But I know at least a lot of the women feel more comfortable opening up to me. And a lot of those women have already gone through something or currently are going through something like what are those called? The protection orders, or,
Yeah.
where the court is supposed to keep someone dangerous away from them. Like, I know women that come to me that have one of those in order, and they're worried, they're scared for their kids and for themselves. I know a lot of women are just single. They're divorced or widowed, and they're by themselves, and they have kids. And it might not be that they're scared necessarily. It's just that now they know they're the primary protector in the family, and so they see that responsibility to learn how to protect their family. And I'm glad that people do that. Some people come to class, unfortunately, they're being drugged by their significant other to be there, or it
Yeah.
could be a kid that's being drugged to be there as well. Sometimes they come around and they see the value in it, or they get hooked to shooting. They think it's fun, which is always fun to see, but not always. And it's not for everyone, right? And not everyone is called, I think, to be a protector and a defender of life, and that's okay. And then there's sometimes the people that come because maybe they've seen me on the internet, or they've seen Adam and they're curious, so they come to the class. And these are always like the most dangerous ones, the ones that say, I've been shooting my whole life. Like, that's always a red flag for me. And not to say they're not a good shooter, but most of the time there's something that can be learned there. And I'm always happy to do that in a humble way with those people, especially when I'm teaching men. I've noticed that showing them rather than talking to them about things is more sinks in more with them. Like, they want to see the proof that I actually know what I'm talking about. And once I've established proof that I have some credibility, then they'll listen to me, whereas before that, they're kind of coming in a little skeptical, like, who's this little girl that thinks she knows, and that's okay. I don't take offense to that. So I've grown a lot too as an instructor, because I've had to learn how to deal with all different kinds of people, and I'm just happy they're there for whatever reason. I
Well,
welcome
I'm
everybody.
glad that you've learned some things about men, and that you're utilizing them for good ends. Because I'll tell you, I I don't I don't know anything about women, and the women in my life would tell you that, and they would be right. You know what I mean? I've got a wife and a daughter, and then a sister, and all these girl friends, whatever else. And Laura,
Yeah,
they'll tell you, yeah, Michael, he nice guy, but he just doesn't know anything about chicks. And I'm like, yeah, I'll cop to that.
I
So, oh,
don't know.
I'm glad you're picking up things on the opposite sex. I've never been able to do that myself. But okay, so you had this experience. You're out there flying drones, and you're swooping around, and you're picking up images and video and all these other things. And then you say, you know what, I need to take my protection. I need to take my self-defense seriously, and so I'm going to get trained up. Then I'm like, I like this a lot, and I'm enjoying the heck out of it. I want to learn more. I respond well to this, and this is good for me. It's good for others. Okay, so then you put yourself in a position to be recognized by Adam Winch. And so what happens then?
Oh gosh, everything changed after I met Adam. I mean, I don't know how deep you really want me to go, but
As deep as you'd like.
okay. All right, if you say so. Because really what changed in my life, Michael, was shortly after I met Adam and came on to Defenders USA and started the podcast, I gave my life to Christ, and I let go of a whole lot of stuff that was really getting in my way and really holding me back. And when I gave that to him, honestly, and with a humble heart, it changed my life. And so you could say Adam Winch changed my life because he helped lead me to him. And really, I think that's part of Adam's mission too, if we're being honest. He does that through gun training, which is a funny way of doing it. But that's really what changed, because when that happened, my heart changed and my intentions changed, and the things I cared about changed, and the things that were most important in life came to the forefront. And that helped me become a better instructor, a better podcast host. And it rippled into my, my family and everything else. I mean, there's just nothing that it doesn't touch. And I had spent a lot of my life going after things outside of me for satisfaction. And when I finally came to know Christ and realized that everything comes through him, I no longer really had that like desire for, I guess you'd say, the things of the world as much as I did before. And then the flow of everything just almost 180, everything started changing in my life. I started taking care of myself for the first time ever, like really doing it, and really valuing myself in a way that was different. And I know that for your audience, maybe that I don't really know your audience very well, but you gave me permission, so I went there. But that's really the heart of the mission now, is coming from a place of love and of service to others. And if I'm not doing that, then what I'm doing really doesn't matter,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. I can understand that. I can appreciate that. I didn't know that you were going to speak about that. And this isn't something that you and I have talked about before. But
No.
When we find true meaning and purpose in life, I think that you can make a very cohesive argument that your life kind of falls together rather than remains apart. Now, that doesn't remove you from any kind of chaos or calamity. But I think that you're better equipped to handle what may be in front of around you because you see things differently. I mean, full disclosure, I build custom weapons for a living in this little tiny shop. And I think you'd be shocked how much discipling goes on here that I never planned for, that I never believed will be part of what I would do. But people do come in and they know what they're going to get in terms of just an honest approach, a dialogue, or they've quickly ascertained that that they can have a visit with me, whatever else. And sometimes, I'll just ask them, and they'll, well, how are you getting on? How's your life? Blah, 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 blah. And they'll tell you. And sometimes it's great. Sometimes it isn't. And then I may ask, how's your faith? And you can see sometimes people like, oh, I'm so glad you asked. And other times people like, which way's the exit? And I'm like right over there. But it's okay, and that's part of it. And I really appreciate it when people are willing to talk about that or whatever. I mean, I had a customer in here the other day that basically said, and I've grown to know him quite a bit over the years. He's a repeat customer, is a really nice gentleman, and he's like, well, I'm headed out. I've got to get back. My daughter's having these tests run and things aren't looking well. And I said, okay. And he knows by the post social media posts. And by the way I speak, he understands that I'm quite open about my faith. Right. And he's like, well, maybe you'd keep us in your prayers or whatever. And I said, I used to do that. I'll do that, of course. And I used to do that a lot, but I said, why don't we stop and do that right now? And he's like, and then the customer had walked in and was waiting for his appointment. He's literally standing 10 feet away. And I just told these guys, I'm like, if you're willing, I said, and I looked at the other guy who I didn't know was a brand new customer. And I said, does that freak you out? You going to be able to handle it? He's like, no, that's fine. And so, you just stop right there and pray right there. There's no reason to put that off. What if I had a stroke or a heart attack 6 seconds after the guy left? And then I would be like, yeah, I was going to pray for him, God, but I didn't get around to it. I don't want to do that. So I
didn't know that about you. That's crazy.
Oh, I mean, it's just one of those things. I'm like, why do I want to put off prayer? You asking me for prayer. Let's do it right now. Eyes open, looking at each other, communing. Let's do this. And I feel a heck of a lot better about that, Laura, than saying, yes, I'll do that. And then being honest with you, I sometimes forget. And then maybe if I remember later, I feel terrible that I didn't do it or something. So
Mhm.
meaning and purpose and where you derive them are paramount to how you deal with life and other people. And it's a
Right.
big deal when you can get that in the right order, if you know what I
And
mean.
for me, I just wanted to feel comfortable in my own skin, like for once in my life. And more importantly, I wanted to be able to be in the middle of a storm and have peace.
Mhm.
And for the longest time in my life, had just felt like I just went which way the waves went, and I felt so out of control about it. And my solution was to have more control. And so I have this like control freak tendency inside of me that I've been working on, knowing now that I am not in control of anything, even when I think I am. But those are things that, he's worked on in me. And now I can honestly say that even though I still struggle, and I really, really do sometimes, most of the time, as long as I can get my compass pointed north again and I can go back to him and give it to him again, that peace does come even during the storms. And it's amazing to me to practice that, to put that into practice.
Yeah.
So I just wish that for everyone, especially the world we're living in right now.
Yep. No kidding. I drive by this little I don't know. I don't believe it's an incorporated city anymore. I don't know how many folks are there. It's still called a town. Um, I don't know, 12 houses or something like that. And I drive
Yeah.
through this little place and I have to make a right turn and at the stop sign and head a different direction. And there's one little tiny church. And, it's one of those churches that's 40 by 40 feet, but it's, 80 feet tall, one of those, really
Yeah.
tall steeple, but a little tiny church. And so it's my idea of what I grew up in as a kid, as a church, not much different than that. Lots of stained glass, very pretty. Anyway, so they have this little, they have the little sign or the thing out front. They change the 4-inch tall letters to something different and whatever each week. I drove by there 100 times. I don't think that I'd paid ever attention to much of what was ever written on there. And one day, it's been a few months ago now, it said, "If God is your co-pilot, switch seats." And I'm like,
Mm.
oh my god, I could not believe that I had thought about it like that. But when you knew what
Yeah.
you're talking about earlier about control and those ideas, and I'm thinking, wow. I stopped and took a picture of it and started texting around to some of my buddies. I'm like, hey, this
Yeah.
might give you something to think about. It sure made me sit back in my chair.
Yeah.
But that's legit. If you think that
Definitely.
you're in control, and Jesus is riding shotgun, man alive, you
Yeah.
you got it backwards, and you should. And if you think that you've got it right, there's a change you should be making.
And I gotta switch seats every day, Michael. Every day. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not suggesting anybody listening that this is an easy thing. Are you kidding me? I mean, like, I have to remind myself. I mean, Michael, why are you upset about this? Why are you in a twist over that? Why are you angry? Why are you anxious? Whatever else. You don't need to carry that around like an anchor. That's stupid. Don't be doing
You don't
that.
have to. That's the glorious thing about it. You don't have to.
I know, but I still need the reminder, and I fancy myself a smart guy, right? And I'm like, dude, this is basic stuff. Get back to the basics. Quit doing this. This is dumb. So,
Isn't it funny
believe
how
me,
the most simple things that are the most life-changing are hard. They're not easy, but they're simple, right?
they are. But I am telling myself something, and these, you know how it is. These things change with time. Your biblical literacy increases. You have
Mhm.
different contexts and different understanding and different life application. So this is a continually changing thing, and there's a metamorphosis associated with it. But I end up telling myself, my wife, kids, people that need to hear it, they're lamenting over something, or there's a problem. I'm like, now hold on a minute. I am absolutely convinced that Jesus didn't die on a cross so I could sit here with a furrowed brow, angry about something that I have absolutely no control over. That's dumb. And so when I think about it like that, and that helps me pretty quickly shed whatever this thing is that I should shed and move on with something that I ought to move on with. So I don't know if that's helpful for you, but it's the way that I
Yeah,
bring it into
it's
focus or
perspective is what
context.
it is. Yeah, it's
Oh yeah.
perspective. I think it's so
Okay.
easy to get in the weeds and lose perspective so easily.
Yeah. So so I get this question a lot when if a show or an episode goes this direction, and some do, some don't. I have people that say, how can you justify as a self-proclaimed Christian self-defense or the harming of others? So that's not a gotcha
That's a good
question.
question. No, I
Have you
get it.
thought
Yeah.
about that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your response then?
Well, the commandment is thou shalt not murder, and then murdering is different, I believe, than defending oneself against evil. I believe that the Bible talks over and over about having discernment and watching out for deceivers. I mean, I know in First John right now, it's in First John. He talks about what it says. John says, "Watch yourself," which is having your guard up essentially to evil, to understand what is true and what is not true. Right. So having discernment for evil is a real thing. And do you think that God would say, "Oh yeah, know what evil is, but then just allow yourself to be run over by evil"? I don't think that's true at all. And I don't think that defending oneself and murder are the same thing. I really do
No,
not. I mean, why in Nehemiah would they be working while they have weapons to protect themselves? I mean, why would that be in the Bible if that was not okay? So that's one example. I mean, I don't know all the scripture verses to tell you, but I do know that there's nothing about defending oneself, I believe, in the Bible that would be murderous. The thing about being a Christian is the condition, I believe, of your heart. And
yeah.
the condition of your heart determines your action. So if your heart is evil, then you are murdering people with ill intention for your own will and your own whatever it is that, thing that you want to accomplish. But if you contend to do the will of God and be a follower of Christ, then I believe that your heart should be aligned with Him. And therefore your heart is humble. Your heart is not out. It's not murderous. It's not trying to do evil to people. It is, but it is a protective mechanism that I believe is true. So I'm not sure what your thoughts on that are, but I would love to hear them as well.
Well, from a scriptural basis, I've written a few blogs, and I think that I did two month to month, back to back for a men's ministry that I do with a friend of mine. And I think one was called the biblical case for self-defense. And I think the other was the biblical case for preparedness. And so I went through all that stuff and compared scripture. And we went through all those things. And I think that it made sense for the guys. And I'm really glad that I did it. But one of the things that had helped me understand through that process and through digging and delving was, I don't intend, as somebody who carries for the purposes of self-defense or possibly the defense of others, I don't intend on stopping a life. I intend on stopping a threat. And that's a really important distinction to make, because I'm not interested in stopping a life. Bad guy, anybody else, obviously. So what I am interested in stopping a threat, and then I immediately pivot to life-saving mode. I'm quite willing to put a tourniquet on anybody.
Right.
you know what I'm saying, or whatever it may be. Chest compressions, CPRs become so easy now, and the Red Cross and these people that offer the training. I mean, staying alive. I mean, chest compressions, keep it going. I mean, I don't even think that they want us doing breaths anymore, because it takes too much time away from moving the blood up to the brain where it's got to be. So I mean, they just want you doing continual chest compressions to keep circulation up to the extremities and through the brain. So it's very, very simple to get back in the rhythm of things if you can get a save, because if you're having to do chest compressions, things are dire, obviously. But to answer your question directly, I try and make an important distinction between stopping life and stopping a threat. They are not the same. And so that's my mindset. I don't think that that's some weird justification at all, because I know that, I believe that, and I think that I can prove that to somebody. So
and you're saying that self-defense is not the intent to kill. Self-defense is the intent to stop the bad thing that's happening, and that makes perfect sense. Adam Winch in his classes often talks about how big is your love, because he talks about self-defense as being an act of love. It is, how big is your love for your family, for the people that you're protecting? Are you willing to draw a gun to protect those people? Do you love them that much to do so? Or do you love them enough to go get training to protect them? And I love that, how big is your love? Because someone who doesn't have love in their heart, and they have evil in their heart, and they do the act of killing someone, that's murderous intent. That's a totally different thing, in my opinion. And I'm not sure I'm explaining it well, but hopefully you're
No, it is.
Yeah.
No, I understand it completely, and I appreciate hearing it like that. I sometimes, I'm up for a good old-fashioned debate as much as anybody. I find that happening less and less today, because most of the people want to pivot to either victim status or figure out a way to put themselves in position of power over you in any argument for the purposes of winning. But nobody's really interested for the purposes of learning or discovering or unearthing something or understanding the context of one another's position. And so it's a little tougher to do it now. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's rare. But that said, I try and explain to these people, I mean, listen, I don't think that you're grasping that the critical nature that I'm approaching these subjects. Let's call it a gun-free zone. That's a perfect example. The critical nature of the way I approach a gun-free zone is based primarily in love. And oh, by the way, it's necessary that I approach this with love so that we can be honest about this, because we have to establish A, the nature of good and evil, and B, a mutual trust. Because if we don't have those things, if we don't have a mutual understanding of what constitutes good and evil, then we're looking at two different color skies, and that's not going to work. So we have to establish that. And then we need trust so that we're on firm footing with one another, so that we can relay things back and forth together, and we're honest, and we can take each other with respect and honesty. So those are basics. And then I walk into something like, listen, ask yourself what a gun-free zone is. It's an arbitrary sticker. It's letters of text on a wall, but it doesn't make anybody actually safer. In fact, I could argue that there's a net droop in safety, because people are under the false impression, I'm secure here. This is a gun-free zone. And so they let their guard down naturally or on purpose. And I'm like, none of those things are true, because anybody that wants to disobey a little sticker on a door can put you in harm's way, and they do put you in harm's way. So it's important that we approach these things with love and as the guiding principle behind this, or else we're never going to get anywhere. And a lot of people will dismiss that pretty quickly, and I don't think they had ought to, especially in the Second Amendment debate, if you want to call it that. It's not uncommon at some point in some of these episodes for me to use the example of the Second Amendment being a right, an ideology, a framework that other people don't want you to have, not because they're taking something from you, Lora. Like, I could be considered dastardly if I took your house or harmed you personally, mentally, sexually, whatever it may be. If I stole your belongings, you know what I'm saying? If I took your car, if I took money out of your wallet, those you could say rightfully that there are crimes, and I had not to do that because I want something from you that I'm going to take for myself. All right. You've got it. Now I take it. Right. But the Second Amendment is about that for some of these folks. They don't take it from you because they want it. They take it from you because they can't stand that you have it. Now think about the mind necessary to be threatened by you having a means to defend yourself, not to come after them. They're almost never saying, oh, you're going to come kill me. They almost never say that because it's preposterous. They can't say it. And if they could, they probably would. But they don't say those kinds of things. They just want you to not have it because of what it makes them feel like in their mind for themselves. Now, what mindset is necessary in order to inhabit those kinds of beliefs and those thoughts? It's not one of love, and it is not one of trust. It is not one of a mutual understanding about what constitutes good and evil. We got to get back to those concepts as frequently as we can so that there'll be more people that understand A, us, and B, the nature of how these things are supposed to work, which, oh, by the way, I know you recognize these all come from a biblical framework. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a really different way to approach it when you talk about how big is your love, or what loving principles allow me to think and believe and behave in these ways. Well, it's pretty simple if you think about it, and I'm not ashamed a bit to talk about things like that. You shouldn't be
I
either.
love it. I love hearing you talk about it. Well, and it's been a journey for me to be as open as I have been. I had a little bit of hesitancy with you here today just because I hadn't done my homework on you. And so I didn't know where you stood on things. Had I known that, I probably would have just dove into it without being hesitant. But like for me, just as much as I did talk about my faith, that is like on the spectrum of courage, that is way further down the line than I used to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually
Yeah, sure.
developing a program now that has a spiritual component to it. It's launching the end of this year. And for the longest time I didn't have the courage to put that in there because of the way the world is right now, which ironically is the reason it should be in there, right? Why that we should be an example and a light in the world despite all of the darkness. It's like that what you just said is like just proves that the need for us to be a light and an example for other people and to stand in that in confidence and courage, even when there's opposition, and especially when there's opposition, and doing that in a way that's loving. And so, but anyway, to go back to the program, it's called Fully Armed. I'm going to be launching it at the end of this year. If any of your viewers are interested in this program, it is a very holistic approach to self-defense. It's for people who are early in their path of self-defense, who are perhaps living, maybe not in fear, but just would like to get on the journey of how do I prepare myself really? Like, yeah, I can go buy a gun, but what I've learned, Michael, is that the gun is such a small sliver of the pie. It is such
Yeah.
a small sliver. It gets the most attention, but the preparedness in and of itself is a holistic thing. It is emotional control, spiritual growth. I think there's a physical component to it. There should be, if we're being realistic. And then all of the paths and steps necessary that aren't gun related. There are a lot of other tools a person could
Yeah.
carry with them that aren't just a gun that can be very helpful in a self-defense situation.
Yeah.
I talk about all of those things. Yes, that's your most powerful weapon. So I talk about all those things in that program. So if your audience is interested in that, they can go to defenders-live.com and become a subscriber there. It's free. But then I'll have your email address and I can, oh yeah, look at that. And then I can email you when that Fully Armed program comes out. But yeah, all of my episodes are on that website as well.
Fantastic. And that's defenders-live.com for those of you not watching the screen. It's kind of funny. I tell people this in jest, and I think that I've mentioned it on episodes here before, but I am probably the worst gun sales guy there is for women, especially who are going through a split or some sort of divorce, because it's not uncommon for people to come out here to the shop. I'll have a friend or a friend of a friend or somebody, such and such is having a rough time, and I think they want to talk with you. Okay, well, I've got some time at 10 a.m. Why don't you send them out? So they show up. Well, what are you looking for? Well, I just want a gun because if I had it, I'd feel safer. I'm like, okay, all right. Can I ask you some questions? Well, sure. Well, do you know how to use a gun? Well, no, not really. But like I said, it feels safer because things are getting kind of crazy around here. Okay, I can understand that. But I need to ask you some hard questions, like some seriously hard ones. Can you handle it? Yeah, I think so. Well, this person was not very many weeks or months ago was your soulmate, according to you. And now this person is no longer your soulmate, or it's a soulmate that you can't be around any longer. I said, are you prepared to shoot this person? Maybe in front of your children or friends and family, and then immediately moving to life-saving mode to see if you can spare them. Have you thought through that? And you can watch them shrink and literally shrivel and die on the vine. I'm like, I'm not trying to freak you out. Philia, I love you too much with brotherly love to knowingly try and hurt you with these words, but I need you to understand that these are the possible outcomes if you do this. Or what could be more likely is that maybe the gun is either locked away so that it can't be used, or if it's not used or handled properly, maybe your kids or somebody else could get it. So I would really like for you to consider self-defense training. I'd really like for you to brush up on situational awareness, all these other things that I can clue you into. Oh, by the way, I've got friends that'll give you, they know if I call them up, hey, this person's going through a rough time, they need schooled up, they'll let you in the classes for free. It won't cost you a lick. I'd really like for you to go do those things and sharpen this tool up here, become confident, know what's going on, have a plan, execute all these other things. And then when you're ready, then add that tool, a firearm, whatever it may be, to your toolbox. Would you consider that? And usually I send them out of here and they never come back for a gun. Some do, some don't. But the truth of the matter is there are things that precede a firearm. And, and that people are thinking about it that way. And as you know, and so, I mean, are those things discussed in classes very often? I'm curious because it's been a while since I took a class myself. It's been a few years.
Well, it depends on which class you're taking. I mean, if you take my class, definitely there is some major context involved before we start shooting, and some general legalities, especially for the state that we're in. I have a handout that I've prepared for them just so that I just feel better about my responsibility as an instructor, that at least I've given them the law of Montana and highlighted a few things for them to think about. I think that's important. And yes, the context of like, hey, just because we're going to shoot guns today and you're going to learn how to shoot a gun, a one-day gun class is not a way to make you not scared anymore. And all of a sudden you've checked the box and you're good to go. That's not what this is about, and unfortunately, it's just a fact that most people that take, that first gun class, that check the box, that get their concealed carry permit, that's all they ever do. It's really the truth. So that's why while I do have them, I pour into them as much as I can without overwhelming them, and give them all the resources I can.
Now that I think of it, we're talking about training classes. We're talking about trainers. We've got a list. I'm going to pull it up here. Well, now I want to leave your site up because I want to talk more about that. But it made me wonder about our IFC's trusted partners. I try and mention this when we're recording because I want people to go to iowafc.org and see that we have a list of people that are offering, program codes and discounts and tangible goods, the discounts off services, whatever else. And so I want people to go support those folks because they support you, they support us. So by all means, use those, become an IFC member to unlock those discounts and those bargains. But I will also say, now that I think of it, I don't think that we have any trainers on our list of trusted partners. I wonder why that is, because there are some really, really good ones locally for us. I mean, granted, there's a lot of people that listen to this that are outside Iowa. I mean, there's more people than just between two rivers, right? But but the truth of the matter is there are a ton of really good trainers out there because it hasn't been, honest to goodness, as you know, I'm sure you've learned it. It hasn't been that many years ago. Training was harder to get. There weren't as many trainers and there weren't as the higher caliber of trainers that there are now. So it's changed so much for the better in 30, 20, and 10 years. It's unbelievably different now than it was before. And I'm really glad for that because there's some fantastic choices out there. That's good for the consumer. It's good for trainers. It's good for trainees.
Yeah. And there are a lot more women coming into the market too, which is why I feel a responsibility to continue to do what I do, both on the podcast and as an instructor. I mean, I know for me that I was fortunate that there was a woman instructor in the very first gun class I took, and had there not been, and no offense to men at all, I might have not been as apt to come back. I just really gravitated towards her. I felt way more comfortable with her. And so since I know what that experience is like, I try to be that for other women as well.
I hear that a lot. I had Paige Rue on here just a few weeks ago. I've had Melody Lauer. Amy Lovato. I've had a lot of Amanda Suffolk. I mean, I've had a lot of folks through here that are basically telling me the same things. Remember earlier when you said that you learned some things about men, or I kind of made that joke, and I told you that I have learned nothing about women. I think that I'm not dogging on guy trainers. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is there's a different approach on how women approach things usually in these kinds of ways compared to how men may approach these things. And so there's a relate associated with a woman approaching these things differently for another woman to uptake. And I can appreciate that. I truly can. And I'm glad that people recognize that. I see a lot more women now than I ever used to. I see a lot more younger people now than I ever used to, because this idea that the Second Amendment community was fat old white guys was not completely true, but was true enough that it could be said with some confidence. And that's not what the Second Amendment community is represented by now, not solely. There's everybody that you can possibly imagine across every spectrum, and I'm very tickled about that.
Yeah, me too. Definitely.
So Defenders Live, I've got this over here, and I'm going down through here. Episode 158. Man. 160.
Yeah, I hit 160.
What do I got to do to get ahead? I mean, geez Louise.
Well, and I took a few months off too, so I could have been higher than that, but I took a few months off to develop that fully armed program.
So you touched on that. Is there anything else that you're willing to divulge that we can look forward to, or do you want us to subscribe so that we can get it all under our belts when that time comes?
Well, there's not much more to divulge. I already divulged that, there's a spiritual component to it. I'm just taking a holistic approach. And the reason I'm doing that is because for the longest time, I was, grabbing at stuff left and right. And I finally started to see this pattern of all of these things are all related to the other things. And when I strengthen myself physically, when I strengthen myself spiritually, when I strengthen myself emotionally, and then I have the knowledge and the tools, it's like, the knowledge and the tools are a subsidiary of the most important pieces of self-defense. I think once the emotional, physical, and spiritual components are put into place firmly, and in my opinion, the spiritual component is number one. For me, that's been my case. Then the tools and the knowledge can be utilized in a way that make more sense and actually are effective then, because if you, let's say, for example, let's say that you've taken a ton of gun training, you have all the knowledge, you have tons of skill, you've bought all the fancy guns and all the fancy tools and all the stuff, but you lack emotional control. Well, what do you think you're going to end up like in a self-defense situation, right? What do you think that your legal situation is going to look like? And, Adam Winch talks a lot about this as well, which is, and I talk about this in the Fully Armed program, which is the aftermath of self-defense. And I'm sure you've had people on your show talk about that. But that's something that I've noticed that a lot of my students haven't really given much thought to, which is the social, emotional, spiritual, and legal, financial aftermath of pulling the trigger on another human life. Like that, it is just the first step towards another chapter of your life that is going to be completely different than the chapter before. So all those things are unpacked in that program. And I try to just make it, it's pretty extensive and it's a pretty big deep dive. It's going to take some time to go through, but I don't just talk at you and tell you what my experience has been. I actually give you some tools and some practices to put into place daily to help get you set up so that when you do take your first gun class, you are as prepared as you can be to be a good defender of life. You know what I mean? I feel like there's a gap. People start with the gun and they start with the class and they forget all these other things that are just as if not more important to think about.
The mental preparation precedes everything that we do. When I sit down with my wife's good at it. My daughter's good at it. She's 16. My son is almost 12, and he's really shaping up now with this. But it's in theory, not always in practice for him. But I try and get across to these kids, other people, the mental preparation for these things is paramount. So
Yeah.
like for example, when I sit down with my little boy and I'm like, okay, we need to pray. And so, and I just say, I made this, let's say that we're praying over supper or lunch or whatever. I'm like, may this food nourish our minds and our bodies and our souls. And the reason that we want our mind nourished is because this is how we think. This is how we speak. It'll precede how I act, all these other things. So we need to get our minds calibrated, like you mentioned, like calibrated north with Lord, whatever it may be. We need to do that. And so it's the same in every aspect of life. If I think through how I'm going to drive in the rain, not only the practice of having done it, but if I think through that, I'm better prepared to drive in a downpour. There's absolutely no question. I mean, I don't remember exactly what it was you said earlier, but it was about the comfort associated with talking about one's faith and having it intertwined into everything that we do in Dutch, and the willingness and the comfort associated with saying it in front of anybody openly in any way. Well, I would encourage you to go that direction because just because you should never be ashamed of those kind of things. But coming from a person who was ashamed of that stuff and didn't have the guts to say when I had ought to, I can remember, honestly, in Second Amendment circles, or a Second Amendment circle was the first time I really did that well.
Really?
Yes. I can remember I had wanted to be involved in NRA's committee process for a long time. I knew that I could help. I knew that there were things that I could do. And I wanted to be on legislative affairs and some of these other great big high power committees if I could get put on them. I'm not an NRA board member, but I wanted to participate. And so I had a good friend come to me and say, listen, I think I can help. If you said this and if you did this, you might put yourself in a position to do this. It might work for you. But oh, by the way, I got to tell you, I think that your strengths would lend themselves much better to grassroots or youth or clubs and associations because, you organize other people, blah, 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 blah. So the short version is I did eventually. I was blessed, if you will, and honored to be placed on the clubs and associations committee for NRA. That was like 8 years ago. And so I travel out there for meetings. I'm walking into this room. Some people I had known of, but most of the people I had never seen or met. And I look around, I'm thinking, everybody here is far better dressed than I am. So these people all seem to know one another, not me. And I sit down at the committee table and there's an audience of people out around there, other board members and people that are in this meeting, right? And so I thought to myself, man, we can go around the room for these introductions. I wonder what I had ought to say and what I had not ought to say. And it dawned on me that the only way to do this well would be to put everybody on the spot about who I was and who I wasn't. And so I felt like that was best, not to be antagonistic or arrogant, but well, I'll just tell you honest. Yeah. Well, I also needed to, since I wasn't sure what I was going into completely, and I didn't know who I was among. I'm not saying that I was saying that was thinking it was very bad or very good. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I didn't know. And so I thought to myself, the best thing for me to do is to put these guys on notice and put myself on notice at the same time. And the only way to do that is to make a public pledge to something better than oneself. So I just, when they got around to me in an introduction, I said, my name's Michael Ware. I own a little custom shop in Iowa. And I didn't have this big, long list of accolades in a bio, right? And so I just said, well, I want to work hard for the committee because I know that the NRA members ultimately are the beneficiaries. And oh, by the way, I intend on glorifying God with everything that I do here. No more, no less. And you could see some people in the room warm up to that. And you could see other people literally lean back in their seats because they didn't want anything to do with that or it was so foreign. You know what I'm saying? And so that was the first time I ever did that. I don't know why. You know how it is. I mean, maybe I got a pat on the butt that I couldn't explain, or I was compelled or whatever. I don't know. But I did that, and I've never been sorry about it. And to be honest with you, that really helped shape the interactions that I had, because I didn't have people coming up lobbying me to do this pet project or this one. Not that any of them are bad, but I didn't have anybody asking me to do that, because I had established that this is what I was about, and this
Yeah.
is how I plan on carrying myself. And so if you were interested in that, come alongside me and I'll come
Yeah.
alongside you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it might be a waste of our time. And
Yeah.
I've been sorry that I did that. And so I would encourage you or anybody listening, lead with that. And oh, by the way, lead with it well, so
Yeah.
be a
I
good
love that
test.
you said that. I love that you said that, because I've had people tell me, like, Laura, you talk about religion and politics on your show. You might want to be careful about that, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of
Right.
contemplated that, but only for a short time. And then I was like, if I lose some people along the way here, like, those aren't the people God wants on my, in my court. Like, I am speaking to specific people here. If you want to come along for the ride, great. If it's not for you, okay. I'm not here to please everyone. And I used to be that person, Michael. I used to be that person, and I'm just not anymore. I can't have that kind of responsibility. It's impossible. And I can't live with integrity and be authentic if what I'm doing is trying to appease everyone else around me. And I'm kind about it, and I don't want to, like, what is the word? I can't think of the word. Sometimes my mind goes blank. Or um, shove it down someone's throat kind of a thing. I'm not that kind of a person, but also I get to say what I want to say, and I'm going to
Well,
speak the truth. So.
I'm naturally belligerent myself, so I come at this from the other end of the spectrum, where I say and do things I had not to, too pushy, or not well intentioned at the right time. And I'm a friend that jokes with me all the time. He's like, well, heresy is usually a right thing in the wrong place. I'm like, dude, nobody's going to understand it when you say that. So be real careful about how you say it. He's like, see, I'm like, okay, fine. I proved your point. But
That's so funny.
I don't have any problem sharing in that realm. But I think it's part of being honest about the nature of things. I think that that's one of the reasons that I enjoy the Second Amendment so much. What the words truly mean, how they play out in daily life, knowing that it can only really work within one very specific framework anyway, and how many people probably miss that. So I have a tremendous magnetism towards the Second Amendment and everything that it includes, for all kinds of really spiritual but common sense reasons. And I like to share that with people wherever I can, Laura. I mean, I wouldn't be on this podcast, you wouldn't be on it if those things weren't part of who we were.
Yeah. Yeah. This has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you for having me on.
Certainly. Well, I tell you what, let's wrap things up. I did talk about trusted partners. Oh, I want to put one little thing up here on the screen real quick before I forget it. Where is okay, so in full disclosure, Laura helped us transition into StreamYard, get this all set up. Thank you, Lora Thorson Creative, for doing that. So I'm using this program that we produce as we record, right? As we live stream, all these things, right? And so I can pick little tickers over here to go across. So here's the one for the raffle. I want to make sure that people see that because, also, I've got it right here. It's handy. I'll get it up in front of the camera. Farrow's Lead Farm. This was a koozie I was using earlier. Elliott Farrow and the lead farm over there near the Quad Cities is one of our trusted partners. But they partnered with us to offer a 450 Bushmaster rifle for the purposes of raffle. You can go buy tickets at iowafc.org. There's a tab there for that. But we're going to try and get that done right after Thanksgiving itself. That's when the drawing will be. So for the folks that want to use that 450 for Iowa's deer season, you'll be able to get it in time if you hustle to get out there and do some hunting with it, or bequeath it to a son or a daughter or a nephew and niece or whatever else. So keep that in mind. You can go to iowafc.org and pick up those tickets. We will be glad for everybody to do that because it's a good source of fundraising for the organization, and we always appreciate that. So I want everybody to know. Again, Lora Thorson from Lora Thorson Creative, but obviously defenders-live.com, and the other one is defenders-USA. Is that correct?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure we plug defenders-usa.com is where you can look up all the training classes that we do. Not just mine, but Adam's and other trainers too. Yeah. Within
Okay.
Defenders USA.
Okay, let me grab that.
I'm the dedicated instructor
We'll
in
share that
Montana right
tab.
now, but we have another
Click.
instructor in Colorado, and then Adam travels all over the country. So if you're interested in hosting a class, we can bring Adam to you.
Okay, fantastic. So that's defenders-usa.com. So I want to make sure everybody knows about that. Again, Lora Thorson, thank you for sharing your journey, sharing your faith. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me, Michael. It was fun.
All right. Have a great day. Thank you. See ya.